The entire ballroom fell silent when the DNA results landed on the table. Dozens of powerful businessmen stared at the Korean Mafia heir. His wife stood frozen. The family elders looked confused. And then everything shattered. The child is not yours. Those 5 words destroyed an entire marriage in seconds. The empire was still his. The wealth was still his. The power was still his. But the woman carrying a baby in her womb had betrayed him. And suddenly, none of it mattered. Because at that moment, there was only one person he could think about. The woman he had abandoned 1 year earlier. The woman who had loved him when he had nothing to offer except his heart. The woman he sacrificed for power. What nobody knew was that losing her would become the greatest regret of his life. And what he was about to discover would change everything. Because the poor girl he left behind was no longer poor. And she was no longer waiting for him. But what happens next changes everything. If you love Korean billionaire romance and mafia love stories like this, subscribe now to @Physial_Threads and turn on notifications so you never miss our next story. Long before he became one of the most feared young men in South Korea, Kang Jun-seo was simply a man in love. Most people who knew him today would never believe it. The newspapers called him cold. Business rivals called him ruthless. His enemies called him dangerous. As the only son of the powerful Kang family, he was expected to inherit an empire worth billions. An empire built through generations of influence, business networks, and underground connections that made even politicians nervous. But before all of that responsibility landed on his shoulders, Jun-seo had been happy. Truly happy. And the reason for that happiness was a woman named Naya. Naya was unlike anyone he had ever met. She wasn't Korean. She had arrived in Seoul years earlier as an international student from Ghana. She worked multiple jobs. She rented a tiny apartment. She counted every coin before buying groceries. Life had never been easy for her. Yet somehow she always smiled. The first time Jun-seo saw her was during a heavy rainstorm. Most people were running for cover. Naya was standing under a broken bus stop umbrella trying to help an elderly woman whose shopping bags had fallen apart. The woman kept apologizing. Naya kept smiling, even though her own clothes were soaked. Even though she clearly had somewhere important to be. Something about her stayed in his mind. For weeks. Then months. Eventually fate brought them together again. And then again. And again. Until one day neither of them could imagine life without the other. At first Naya didn't know who he really was. To her, he was simply June. A hard-working man with kind eyes. A man who listened. A man who remembered every detail she shared. A man who always made sure she got home safely. For nearly 2 years, they built a beautiful relationship away from the spotlight. They ate at small restaurants, walked through quiet streets, shared dreams about the future, and every night before sleeping, they talked about what life would look like once they achieved their goals. One dream became especially important. They wanted to build a company together. A company focused on helping immigrants and foreign workers find opportunities in South Korea. Naya believed nobody should feel alone in a foreign country. Jun-seo loved the idea. They spent countless nights sketching plans, creating names, imagining possibilities. At the time, neither of them knew those conversations would become important years later, because destiny was already preparing to test their love. Meanwhile, danger was already approaching. The Kang family empire was beginning to crumble. Jun-seo's father had become seriously ill. Behind closed doors, rival organizations were watching closely. Investors were nervous. Allies were questioning the future. The family elders knew they needed stability, and they believed stability could be purchased through marriage. There was only one problem. Jun-seo was already in love. When his father finally called him into the family mansion, he knew something was wrong. The mansion felt unusually quiet. The servants avoided eye contact. The elders sat around a long table waiting for him. His father looked older than ever. Weaker. Sicker. And that frightened him. After everyone settled into their seats, the oldest elder spoke. There is only one way to protect this family. Jun-seo immediately hated where the conversation was heading. The elder continued. The Choi family has offered an alliance. His stomach tightened. Because everybody knew what that meant. Marriage. The Choi family controlled one of the largest business conglomerates in Asia. An alliance between both families would strengthen their influence immediately. It would silence competitors, restore confidence, and secure the empire. You will marry their daughter. The room became silent. Jun-seo stared at them, then slowly shook his head. No. The answer came instantly, without hesitation. Without thought. No. Because he loved Naya. Because he already knew who he wanted beside him. Because no amount of power was worth losing her. Unfortunately, the family wasn't asking. They were demanding. His father looked away before speaking. If you refuse. The sentence hung heavily in the air. You will lose your inheritance. Jun Seo's jaw tightened. Nobody spoke. Then came the final blow. If you walk away from this responsibility, another successor will be chosen. For the first time in years, he felt trapped. He loved Naya. But he also loved his father. He loved his family. And despite everything, he felt responsible for the thousands of employees whose futures depended on the empire surviving. For weeks he barely slept. Every option felt wrong. Every decision hurt. He wanted to fight. He wanted to refuse. But each day brought more bad news. More financial pressure. More instability. More fear. Eventually he convinced himself of something dangerous. He told himself this sacrifice was temporary. He told himself he would fix everything later. He told himself becoming powerful first would allow him to protect Naya forever afterward. It was a lie, and deep down he knew it. But sometimes people choose comforting lies over painful truths. This decision would soon backfire. The day he told Naya remains the worst day of his life. She listened quietly. Too quietly. He explained everything. The family pressure. His father's illness. The empire. The responsibilities. The impossible choice. He expected anger. Tears. Arguments. Instead, she simply sat there. Silent. The heartbreak in her eyes hurt more than any scream ever could. Finally, she asked one question. So they made you choose? Jun Seo nodded. And you chose them. His chest tightened. Because there was no way to deny it. No matter how many explanations existed. No matter how complicated the situation seemed. The truth remained simple. He chose them. And not her. Naya smiled sadly. The kind of smile people wear when their hearts are breaking. Then she stood up. I understand. Those words should have comforted him. Instead, they terrified him. Because she sounded like someone saying goodbye. What he didn't know was that he was about to lose her completely. And when he finally realized what he had thrown away, it would already be too late. The next morning, Naya was gone. At first, Jun Seo thought she simply needed time. A few days. Maybe a week. He called her phone. No answer. He sent messages. Nothing. He visited her apartment. Empty. The landlord informed him she had moved out. No forwarding address. No explanation. No goodbye letter. Nothing. It was as if she had vanished from the world overnight. For the first time, fear entered his heart. Real fear. Because he realized something. Naya had not left because she hated him. She had left because she loved him too much to stay and watch him marry another woman. That realization haunted him every day. But the wedding preparations continued. The family refused to delay anything. Within months, Seoul's elite gathered for one of the most expensive weddings in the country. The future head of the Kong Empire was marrying Sophia Choi, the daughter of one of Asia's richest families. The cameras loved them. The newspapers called them the perfect power couple. The public envied them. Nobody knew the truth. Nobody knew the groom felt empty inside. Nobody knew the bride wasn't in love. Nobody knew another woman still occupied his heart. As Sophia walked down the aisle, Jun Seo looked at her. She was beautiful, elegant, perfect, and completely wrong for him. Yet he smiled for the cameras, signed the papers, exchanged vows, and officially became her husband. That night, after all the guests left, Sophia removed her wedding jewelry and spoke honestly for the first time. You don't love me. Jun Seo looked at her. She wasn't angry. She wasn't emotional. She sounded amused. Then she laughed softly. Don't worry. I don't love you either. The confession stunned him. Sophia poured herself a drink. This marriage benefits both families. Nothing more. For the first time all day, somebody had finally spoken the truth. Neither of them loved each other. They were simply pieces on a chessboard. Unfortunately, nobody understood how dangerous that arrangement would become. Months passed. Jun Seo buried himself in work. The empire demanded constant attention. His father's health continued declining. Business rivals tested his authority. Every day brought another challenge. Every night he returned to a mansion that felt colder than ever. Sophia rarely stayed home. She traveled constantly. Luxury vacations, fashion shows, private parties, exclusive events. At first Jun Seo ignored it. He wasn't interested in controlling her. There was no love between them anyway. But eventually rumors began reaching him. Photos, whispers, stories. Sophia spending time with another man. At first he dismissed them, because despite everything, he still believed she understood the importance of protecting both families. Then one evening, everything changed. Sophia walked into the mansion smiling. She looked unusually excited, almost glowing. The family gathered immediately. Her father arrived. The Kong elders arrived. Everyone waited. Then Sophia announced she was pregnant. The room exploded with celebration. Champagne bottles opened. Congratulations echoed everywhere. Even Jun Seo felt something unexpected. Hope. For the first time since losing Naya, he imagined a different future. Maybe this child could become something beautiful. Maybe this broken marriage could evolve into a family. Maybe life was finally giving him a second chance. For several weeks, he allowed himself to believe it. But what he didn't know was that disaster was already approaching. One afternoon, a family doctor requested a private meeting. The doctor's face looked unusually serious. Jun Seo immediately sensed something was wrong. After closing the office door, the doctor placed a file on the table. Then he hesitated. We conducted additional testing. Jun Seo frowned. What kind of testing? The doctor swallowed hard. The paternity results. The room suddenly felt smaller. His heartbeat accelerated. What results? The doctor slowly pushed the folder forward. Then came the words that changed everything. The child isn't yours. Silence. Complete silence. For several seconds, Jun Seo simply stared, unable to process what he had heard, unable to breathe, unable to think. Finally, he opened the file. Every page confirmed the same truth. The baby wasn't his. Sophia had betrayed him. The woman carrying a child inside her was carrying another man's child. The empire had built an alliance on a lie, and now that lie was collapsing. Fast. That evening the entire family gathered. Sophia stood across from him. For once she looked nervous. For once she looked afraid. The DNA report sat on the table between them. Nobody spoke. Until Jun Seo finally broke the silence. Who is he? Sophia looked away. That answer was all he needed. She couldn't even deny it. Her father exploded with rage. The elders shouted. Accusations filled the room. Everything descended into chaos. Then one elder pointed toward Jun Seo. If you had paid more attention to your wife. Before he could finish speaking, Jun Seo slammed his fist onto the table. The entire room froze. His voice came out colder than ice. No. Years of frustration erupted all at once. You don't get to blame me. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then he pointed at every elder sitting around the table. You forced this marriage. Silence. You forced me to abandon the woman I loved. More silence. You forced me to choose power over happiness. Nobody could look him in the eyes. Because deep down they knew he was right. The marriage had never been about love. It had been about business. And now everyone was paying the price. Within weeks, the divorce became official. The alliance collapsed. The scandal spread across the country. The perfect marriage was over. But strangely, Jun Seo didn't feel devastated. He felt free. For the first time in over a year, he wasn't pretending anymore. The marriage was gone. The illusion was gone. The lie was gone. Only one thing remained. Regret. Regret for losing Naya. Regret for choosing power. Regret for believing he could return later and fix everything. Because life doesn't always give second chances. And now he had no idea where she was. Still, he refused to give up. The search began immediately. Private investigators. Old friends. Former co-workers. University records. Business contacts. Nothing. Every lead ended in disappointment. Months passed. Still nothing. The woman he loved had disappeared completely. Sometimes he sat alone staring at old photographs, remembering their dreams, remembering her smile, remembering how she looked at him before he broke her heart. Each memory felt like punishment. Then one rainy afternoon, fate intervened. A former university friend mentioned hearing about a fast-growing startup, a company helping immigrants and foreign professionals build careers in South Korea. The concept sounded familiar. Too familiar. Jun Seo's heart skipped a beat. Because years earlier, he and Naya had dreamed about creating that exact business. He immediately investigated. The company had become incredibly successful. Millions in revenue. Thousands of clients. International recognition. Investors loved it. The founder's name wasn't publicly displayed. But something inside him refused to let go. Days later, he finally obtained access to internal records. And when he saw the founder's photograph, the world stopped. Naya. It was her. His hands trembled. His breathing became uneven. For several seconds he simply stared. The poor girl he abandoned was gone. The woman in the photograph looked confident, powerful, successful, beautiful. Not because someone rescued her. Not because she married rich. Not because she got lucky. She had built everything herself. Alone. Using the dream they once shared together. Tears filled his eyes. Not because she became successful, but because she achieved it without him. The woman who once needed support had become stronger than anyone he knew. And suddenly he realized something painful. She had moved forward, while he remained trapped in the past. But what happens when he finally sees her again? What happens when the woman he abandoned looks at him like a stranger? What happens when he discovers the heartbreaking secret she has been hiding since the day she disappeared? The answer changes both of their lives forever. For nearly an hour, Juncio sat alone in his office, staring at Naya's photograph. The woman looking back at him seemed familiar, yet different. The warmth in her eyes remained the same. The kindness remained. But there was something else now. Confidence. Strength. Peace. The kind of peace people earn after surviving heartbreak. And suddenly, he became afraid. Not afraid she would reject him. Afraid she no longer needed him. Because deep down, he knew something painful. The version of Naya he remembered had loved him deeply. But that version had existed over a year ago. People change. Pain changes people. Heartbreak changes people. What if she had moved on completely? Those thoughts followed him for days. Yet eventually he realized he had no choice. He needed to see her. Even if she rejected him. Even if she hated him. Even if she never wanted him back. He needed to apologize. Not because he expected forgiveness. Because she deserved it. Several days later, he arrived outside the headquarters of her company. The building stood proudly in Central Seoul. Modern. Successful. Elegant. Everything they once dreamed about. Employees entered and exited constantly. Everyone looked busy. Everyone looked motivated. It reminded him of Naya. She had always inspired people, even during her hardest days. For nearly 30 minutes he remained inside his car, trying to gather courage. The feared Mafia boss who could negotiate billion-dollar deals without blinking was suddenly nervous. Because none of those things mattered here. This wasn't business. This was his heart. Finally he stepped out, entered the building, and approached reception. Moments later he was escorted upstairs. The elevator felt slower than ever. His pulse accelerated. His palms felt cold. Then the doors opened. And there she was, standing beside a large window overlooking the city. For a moment he couldn't breathe. She looked beautiful. More beautiful than he remembered. Not because of expensive clothes. Not because of success. Because she looked happy. Healthy. Whole. The sight simultaneously filled him with joy and pain. Naya slowly turned around. Their eyes met. The room became silent. A year of separation. A year of regret. A year of unanswered questions. All compressed into a single moment. Juncio expected tears. Shock. Anger. Something. Anything. Instead, Naya smiled politely. The same way someone might greet a business acquaintance. The gesture shattered him. Because there was no emotion behind it. No bitterness. No longing. No attachment. Nothing. It was the smile of a stranger. And somehow that hurt more than hatred ever could. Hello, Juncio. Her voice remained calm. Professional. Controlled. The distance between them felt enormous. He swallowed hard. Naya. For several seconds neither spoke. Then she offered him a seat. Like a client. Like a visitor. Like someone who no longer occupied a place inside her heart. And that realization nearly destroyed him. Eventually he spoke. I searched everywhere. She nodded. I know. The answer surprised him. You knew? She smiled softly. You're not exactly difficult to track. A painful silence followed. Then he looked around her office. Photographs. Awards. Certificates. Evidence of everything she had accomplished. I always believed you'd do something incredible. Naya looked away. For a brief moment emotion flashed across her face. Then disappeared. You gave up your right to say that. The words were gentle, but they landed like a knife. Because she wasn't wrong. He had forfeited that privilege the day he abandoned her. For the first time since entering the room, he lowered his head. I'm sorry. Silence. I'm sorry for choosing them. More silence. I'm sorry for hurting you. Still silence. Finally he looked up. His eyes were filled with regret. I never stopped loving you. Naya closed her eyes. And for a moment he thought he saw pain. Real pain. Not anger. Pain. The kind that never fully heals. When she opened her eyes again, they looked different. Sad. I loved you once. His chest tightened. But I also remember how it felt when you chose everyone else over me. The room became painfully quiet. Because there was no argument against that truth. No explanation. No excuse. No justification. Only regret. The conversation ended shortly afterward. And when Jun Seo left her office that day, he realized something. Winning her back would be impossible. Because she wasn't waiting for him anymore. But what he didn't know was that Naya wasn't as unaffected as she appeared. The moment he left the building, she locked herself inside her office. Then finally allowed the tears to fall. Because seeing him again had reopened wounds she thought were healed. The truth was simple. She still loved him. And that terrified her. Because love had once destroyed her life. Months passed. Jun Seo refused to pressure her. Refused to manipulate her. Refused to use power. For the first time in his life, he chose patience. Every week, he found small ways to support her without expecting anything. Not gifts. Not money. Just actions. When her company faced a licensing problem, he quietly connected her with the right people. When a storm damaged one of her facilities, he personally arrived to help. When one of her employees suffered a family emergency, he arranged assistance anonymously. Little by little. Step by step. Not because he wanted credit. Because he genuinely cared. At first Naya resisted. Then she noticed something. The arrogant air she once knew was gone. The man standing before her had changed. Pain had changed him. Loss had changed him. Regret had changed him. And slowly, against her better judgment, her walls began to crack. They started talking again. Short conversations became longer conversations. Business discussions became personal discussions. Coffee meetings became dinners. Laughter returned. Memories returned. Hope returned. One evening they found themselves walking through the same park where they once spent countless nights together. The air felt calm. Peaceful. Neither wanted the evening to end. Then Jun Seo finally stopped walking. Turned toward her. And spoke the words he had carried for over a year. I still love you. Naya looked away. Tears immediately filled her eyes. Because she had known this moment would come. And because part of her wanted to hear those words again. Yet fear remained. What if your family does this again? The question hit him hard. Because it wasn't unreasonable. His family had caused much of their pain. Jun Seo stepped closer. This time is different. Why? His answer came instantly. Because this time I'd choose you. For several seconds she stared at him. Searching for doubt. Searching for hesitation. Finding none. And for the first time in over a year, she allowed herself to believe him. Meanwhile, the Kong family soon learned the truth. Jun Seo wanted Naya back. The announcement created immediate tension. Several elders opposed the idea. Some still worried about status. Others worried about reputation. The arguments sounded painfully familiar. But this time something was different. Jun Seo wasn't the same man anymore. He stood before the entire family and made himself clear. If being head of this family means losing her again. The room became silent. Then I don't want the position. Nobody expected those words. Not even his father. Years earlier he had chosen the empire. Now he was prepared to walk away from it. For love. The statement shocked everyone. And finally forced them to confront reality. The disastrous marriage. The public scandal. The broken alliance. Everything traced back to one mistake. Forcing him to abandon the woman he loved. Weeks later something unexpected happened. The family requested a meeting with Naya. She arrived cautiously, unsure what to expect. Then one by one, the elders apologized. Not because Jun Seo demanded it. Because they genuinely regretted what they had done. For the first time, Naya felt accepted. Not tolerated. Accepted. The wounds of the past finally began healing. Months later, wedding preparations officially began. But unlike the first wedding, this one felt completely different. No business contracts. No alliances. No pressure. Only love. As the ceremony approached, happiness returned to both their lives. For the first time in years, they looked toward the future without fear. Yet one final secret remained hidden. A secret Naya had carried alone for over a year. A secret that would change everything. The wedding day finally arrived. Family, friends, employees, everyone gathered to celebrate. As Naya walked toward the altar, Jun Seo couldn't take his eyes off her. She looked radiant, beautiful, and most importantly, happy. The ceremony proceeded perfectly. Then during a private moment afterward, Naya asked if they could talk alone. Something about her expression immediately concerned him. They stepped away from the crowd. away from the music, away from the celebration. Then she gently took his hand. There is something I've never told you. Her voice trembled. Instantly, he knew this was important. What is it? Tears filled her eyes. The day I left. She paused, trying to gather strength. I was pregnant. The world stopped. Juncio stared at her, unable to process what he had heard. Pregnant. Their child. Their child. His knees nearly gave way. Tears instantly filled his eyes. But Naya wasn't finished. The stress. Her voice broke. The heartbreak. More tears. I lost the baby. Silence. Complete silence. The revelation shattered him. For several moments, neither spoke. Both cried. Both trembled. Both mourned a future they never had. Suddenly, every regret became heavier. Because he realized something devastating. He hadn't only lost the woman he loved. He had lost their child too. A child he never even knew existed. The pain overwhelmed him. But instead of pulling away, Naya held him. Because this wasn't only his grief. It was hers too. For over a year, she had carried that burden alone. Now she no longer had to. Together they cried. Together they healed. Together they finally released the pain they had been carrying. And somehow, after all the heartbreak, they found peace. Real peace. The kind that comes after surviving storms. Years later, people would look at their marriage and assume life had always been easy. They would see success, wealth, happiness, and never understand the pain behind it. But Juncio and Naya remembered. They remembered every sacrifice, every mistake, every tear. And because of that, they never took each other for granted again. The empire remained successful. Naya's company continued growing. The family embraced her completely. And eventually, they welcomed children into a home built on love instead of obligation. Because sometimes life offers a second chance. Not everyone receives it. But those who do must be brave enough to choose differently. And this time, Juncio finally chose correctly. Not power. Not status. Not wealth. Love. The very thing he should have chosen from the beginning. This story reminds us that true love cannot be replaced by power, wealth, status, or family expectations. Sometimes the choices we make to protect our future end up destroying the very people we love most. Trust, loyalty, sacrifice, and genuine love are worth more than any empire. While regret can be painful, healing becomes possible when people take responsibility for their mistakes and fight for what truly matters. In the end, love is not about who has more money or power. It is about who stays, who sacrifices, and who chooses you when it matters most. If you made it this far, let us know where you're watching from and comment your favorite moment below, like this video, and subscribe to _Threads for more emotional Mafia love stories.